Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going to build something super cool, a 3D image slider made entirely with HTML and CSS. No JavaScript, no libraries, just pure CSS magic.
So let's get started. I've got an empty folder here, and I'm just going to create a new file called index.html and style CSS. Let's start with the usual HTML setup: the doc type, HTML, head, and body tags. Nothing fancy yet, just a clean base to work on.
Inside the body, we'll add a main wrapper. I'm going to call it container, or maybe hero container. Doesn't matter for now. This is going to be the big section that holds everything, our 3D slider, the background, and later some text content on top.
Inside it, we'll put another div called slider. That's going to be the part that actually rotates in 3D.
And inside the slider, we'll add a few items. Each item will hold an image. These will be the slides that spin around in a circle. For now, I'll just create 3 of them. We'll duplicate and fill them later once we set up the structure.
If we open it in the browser right now, of course, it looks super boring, just some stacked boxes on a white background. But don't worry, this is where the fun starts. In the next step, we'll give this thing some life with CSS. We'll make it rotate, we'll add depth, and start seeing that 3D effect come to life. So yeah, that's our base structure, just a hero container, a slider, and a few item blocks inside. That's all we need for now. Next, we'll jump into the CSS and start turning these flat boxes into a real 3D carousel. Let's do it. All right, now that our HTML is ready, it's time to make it look like something. Let's open style.css and start with the basics. First, I like to reset the browser's default margins and paddings. So let's select all elements with and set margin and padding to 0, and also box sizing border box. This way, everything will align nicely and won't break unexpectedly. Next, let's style the body. I want a subtle background so our 3D slider stands out. We'll pick a light gray color for now. Later, we can add a cool grid pattern or image as background if we want some depth. Now, let's move to our hero container. This is the main wrapper of our slider. I'll set it to width 100% and height 100 VH so it fills the screen, and overflow hidden to cut off anything that goes outside. Also, position relative. This will be important later for positioning the slider absolutely inside. Now, time for the fun part, the 3D slider itself. Inside our container, we have that .slider div, and this is where the real depth effect starts. Let's give it a fixed size, 200 pixels wide and 250 pixels tall. That's a nice portrait shape for our cards. I'll place it perfectly in the middle horizontally by setting position absolute, top 10%, and left calc 50% minus 100 pixels. This centers it by subtracting half of its width from the center of the screen. Next, we'll activate 3D space with Transform Style Preserve 3D. This tells the browser, hey, everything inside this element should exist in 3-dimensional space. But for that depth to be visible, we also need perspective. This defines how strong the 3D illusion is. So we'll add Transform, Perspective 1000px. A smaller number means stronger depth, but 1000 is a good balance. Not too extreme, not too flat. Okay, right now, if you refresh, nothing crazy happens yet, but we're setting the stage for the real effect. Let's style each individual card next. Remember, every .card will be one image in the carousel, so we'll make it position absolute so all cards start stacked in the same spot. I'll add inset 0. It's just a shorthand to make the card fill the entire slider area. Each card will then use a transform to rotate and move around the circle. But before that, let's make sure our images fit nicely. Inside each card, we'll target the image. I'll set width 100%, height 100%, and object fit cover. This way, the images fill the card area perfectly without stretching. Let's also make it look a little cleaner. We'll add border radius, 10 pixels, and a soft box shadow. It gives the cards a subtle floating effect, makes them feel more realistic in 3D. Okay, now we'll place these cards around an invisible circle in 3D. I'll explain this slowly and show each step. Don't worry if it looks long, it's just simple math and a little CSS. First, imagine the screen is a stage. Translate Z moves an element closer or farther from the camera. Positive translate Z moves the card toward us. Negative moves it away. Now imagine we can spin the card around its vertical axis. That's rotate Y. If we rotate it a bit and then push it forward, it will sit on the side of the invisible circle. Here, I manually set 3 cards, 0 degrees, 120 degrees, 240 degrees. They're spaced evenly around a circle because 360 divided by 3 is 120. So the 3 cards make a triangle around the center. Important, the order matters. We first rotate the card, so we change what direction it faces, and only after that we translate Z. If you translate Z first and rotate later, you move a different point. The result will look wrong. Manually writing 0 degrees, 120 degrees, 240 degrees, it works, but it's not convenient. What if we have 10 cards? We don't want to calculate each one by hand. Here's the idea. We divide 360 degrees by the number of cards and multiply by the card's index. That way, they'll be evenly distributed around the circle. Simple explanation. 360 degrees is a full circle. If you have 4 cards, 360 divided by 4 equals 90 degrees. So the step between cards is 90 degrees. If you have 10 cards, the step is 36 degrees. We'll use 2 CSS variables, index for the card's number and total for the total number of cards. Since we have 3 cards, we'll set total 3 on the slider. Then, in the HTML, we'll assign an index to each card like this. First card, index 1. Second card, index 2. Third card, index 3. Now let's make it a bit more interesting. We'll add more cards. Instead of just 3, let's create 10 of them. That way we'll really see the circular layout in action, and it'll look much more dynamic. For now, though, we haven't added any styles yet, so everything still looks the same. Now we're going to make the cards rotate around a circle. We're removing this hard-to-maintain code and writing a general solution. First, we need to compute the step angle. That's how many degrees separate each card. We take 360 degrees divided by the total number of cards. So, 360 divided by total gives us the angle between items. Next, we multiply that step by the card's index minus 1, so the first card starts at 0 degrees. That gives us the correct angle for each specific card. Now there's one subtle detail. CSS Calc gives us just a number, but the rotateY function needs an angle. It expects something like 30 degrees or 45 degrees. So we need to tell CSS, hey, treat this number as degrees. We do that by multiplying the result by 1 degree. Now our cards are arranged in a circle. Great! But they are too big, and it's hard to see them all clearly. Let's fix that by making the slider a bit smaller. This way, the cards will fit nicely, and the circular layout will be easier to view. Now let's make it rotate automatically. I'll add an animation to the slider itself and call it Spin 360. We'll set the speed to 20 seconds per full rotation. Use a smooth, linear motion and make it run infinitely. This way, the slider will keep spinning endlessly, giving our cards a dynamic, continuous rotation. Inside the keyframes, we define how the slider will move over time. We start with Transform, Perspective 1000px, Rotate X -16 degrees, Rotate Y 0 degrees. This sets the initial 3D angle and rotation.
Then we rotate it all the way around on the y-axis, ending with rotateY 360 degrees. The perspective stays the same, so the cards keep their 3D depth. That means the slider will keep rotating around the y-axis while being tilted slightly backward on the x-axis, which gives that nice cinematic 3D depth, making the rotation look smooth and visually appealing. Now that the carousel is spinning beautifully, next we'll add content like text, author info, or a big model image behind it. This is what will give our slider that final cinematic wow effect. But first, make sure you preview the 3D rotation and play with the speed and radius. It's really satisfying to see it in action. And before we continue, let's add a nice background to the page. We start with a gray base color and a simple grid using linear gradient. This creates subtle lines across the page, giving some texture and depth. Now that our 3D carousel is spinning beautifully, let's add some content on top. I want a big, bold title for my channel, The Web Journal. We'll place it so that the spinning cards are still visible behind it. First, we create a new div called Info, the hero container. This will hold everything, the big title. Notice the data text attribute on the H1. We'll use it in CSS to create a stroked outline effect for the letters. This way, the text looks modern and overlaps the 3D carousel in a stylish way. Let's position our info class. We want it centered at the bottom of the screen, so we use position absolute, left 50%, and transform translate x negative 50%. At the same time, we'll add a few more styles to perfectly center it and make sure it sits nicely and balanced at the bottom of the page. Time for the big title. We'll use a fancy font to give it a cinematic feel. I'm setting the font size really large and making the line height tight, so the letters look bold and dramatic. The color is dark, and we make the position relative so we can layer effects on top of it later. Next, we use after to add a special outline effect. It takes the text from the data text attribute so it matches the heading perfectly. We give it a light stroke with WebKit text stroke and make the fill transparent. This lets the spinning cards behind the letters show through. It's a subtle but striking 3D effect that makes the title feel alive and cinematic. And that's it. After cleaning up the extra code and adding a bit of responsiveness, our 3D carousel and cinematic title are looking amazing. Everything is balanced, dynamic, and visually striking, a real eye-catching effect for the page. If you enjoyed this tutorial, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, and leave a comment with your thoughts or questions. It really helps and keeps the content coming.